You are listening to Did You Hear?
Did you hear?
The Johnson County Library Podcast.
We are coming to you
from the Central Resource Library
in Overland Park, Kansas.
This is your Library Insider.
In this episode of Did You Hear? Ed Raab and Mike Keller chat with Dave Carson about summer camp movies. Relive the nostalgia and let us know if we missed your favorite summer camp movie.
Welcome to another edition of Did You Hear? The Johnson County Library Podcast, and we're big fans of all things that you can check out here at the library, and that is absolutely true for movies. And during the summer, I can't think of a better genre than summer camp movies. The campier camp movie, the better. That's what I always say. That's a saying, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You just start saying it.
I just start saying that, and it's a thing. So we have two summer camp movie experts with us today.
As much as anyone else, I guess.
Yeah,
a PhD at Oxford in summer camp film
if you're going to be known for something, why not be known for being, the summer camp movie guy?
Yeah.
So.
I agree. I'm also known as Edward, an information specialist at Corinth.
I'm Mike. I am an information specialist at the Monticello branch.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
What a fun genre. Unfortunately, I think my knowledge of this genre is limited to where it all began, which I think would be Bill Murray's classic Meatballs. But after that, it seems like there's countless other movies that build off of that template. Is that right?
Yeah, I would think so. My thing is it definitely, like, even if you watch a summer camp movie now or in the 90s, or it all kind of goes back to Meatballs in so many different ways, and picking up a lot of them themes. Even some of the movies on this list which we'll get to. Mike here has made a summer camp movies list that everybody can get access to on the website. They all kind of go back and either riffed off that original Meatballs movie, or they kind of just go for broke with almost copying it, parallel storylines.
Yeah, there's definitely summer camp movies and TV shows before Meatballs, but at a point in the 80s, I think that was probably the early 80s or so, that Meatballs kind of like set the standard, which is weird when you go back and watch Meatballs. It's really, to my taste, it wasn't really a great film.
No, I didn't like it either.
But I love summer camp movies anyway, so thank you, Meatballs.
So let me ask you this. Are all the movies that we're talking about today in our collection?
Yes, everything we mentioned today will be in the collection.
So Mike actually went through, I guess we'll give the origin story of why we wanted to do this podcast, which is I looked on our Johnson County JocoLibrary.org website, and I looked on the on order for movies, and I saw that the movie Heavyweights was on order. And if you don't know, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it was a summer camp movie from the 90s, and it had Ben Stiller in it in a prominent role, and a bunch of kids that are just wacky and causing all kinds of trouble, a little smart alecky. And I thought, this is amazing that the library is ordering this right now in 2019. And then I came to find out that was on a list, and the reason it kind of was ordered was because of Mike and constructing this summer camp list. And then I was able to kind of see, and your criteria was all the movies had to happen during a summer camp, essentially.
Or have a prominent scene that occurs at a summer camp. So like The Parent Trap is on the list, but it doesn't fully take place in a summer camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them take place entirely at a camp, and others they touch on it. But there's like a scene of importance that would take place at the camp.
And they all don't echo from Meatballs, because there is one standout on this list that is of a different genre, which is horror.
Yes. Yeah. There's that too, which I guess that would before Meatballs, or that came out before Meatballs.
Yeah, I would hardly think that a horror movie is going to ring to somebody's mind. That's a good summer camp film.
But that sounds like a good list, that you've got something for the kids and something for the adults.
Yeah, wide variety of things.
Wide variety, and that's actually, so once I made it to the list and saw Heavyweights, I came to my favorite Charlie Brown Peanuts Gang special, and I feel like I connected with you on a different human level.
Yes.
Because to see this list, I think you even mentioned that it's one of your favorites as well. It's Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown.
Right.
And if you haven't seen this one, it's, to me, my favorite, even over the Christmas special and over the It's a Great Pumpkin. It's my favorite Snoopy, Charlie Brown, and gang movie because it's outrageous. It feels different. The opening has like an ode to the film Easy Rider, which is really bizarre. Snoopy riding around on a chopper, and that kind of like folksy rock music is playing. It opens with, I think it's Sally being kind of rude to some other kids that are kind of bullying her, and then Charlie Brown is getting bullied at some point by some rascals with a very mean-looking dog.
Cat.
Yes. That's right. Mm-hmm. The Snoopy's nemesis is this very rough-looking tomcat, and it's just so bizarre. And they all build their own little rafts, and they go down the river, and it's just incredible. I always had so much fun watching it in the summer, and I think the reason why I liked it so much as a kid was it wasn't always readily available too. Like the Christmas one and the Halloween one was always ready to go, but that summer one, the Thanksgiving one, the summer one just seemed like it was off everybody's radar.
Yeah, that was one. I found it at the grocery store video store when I was a little kid, and my sister and I rented it regularly. And like, I think that's probably goes back to why I like summer camp movies. Is it, all the Peanuts movies are unique in that there's really no adults. Like, from what I can remember, there's just never adults. And when they are, they talk in that kind of, that muted trumpet kind of thing.
Absent
and
everything at its finest.
Summer camp movies, that's part of what's great about them, is typically it's kids or teenagers that are totally on their own, away from, adult supervision or all this type of stuff. So there's that sense of fun to them. And I think it somehow, the Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown kind of like doubles that, where there already aren't adults, but these kids feel like just very alone in the woods, doing their river raft competition. And and then on top of that, it's just a fun Peanuts movie.
The no adult thing carries over through the comic strip, through the books, through the television specials, and through the movies. But I would say that each one of those is very, very different for the Peanuts world. Yeah. And I got to say, when I was a kid and I saw Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't like it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think it probably had to do with because I loved the television show so much. And when I was a kid, we read the comics, in the paper. I think for somebody that maybe isn't a big fan of those specials and the comic strip, this might be just perfect for them because it's a movie. I think that's what you were describing, is that it's got that different feel of a movie. Yeah. And it's big.
Yeah, it does feel tonally different.
And I like it now, by the way.
And I feel, I do feel like, that is true, because I feel like the Christmas special, one thing that I always see when I go back and watch those is it feels like watching the comic strip, the way that the jokes and the punchline and all that is delivered.
For sure.
And this movie definitely does a little bit different. And you're talking about the kids kind of being on their own, it kind of speaks to what summer camp movies are. It seems like all the time the summer camp movie, it's like the kids are getting away from the adults or the parents as much as possible. And that's true for heavyweights too, which I had to make sure I jumped to this movie next, because this was also, when I saw that was requested to be put on this list, and it was something that it sounds like you potentially had a fondness for.
Oh, yeah.
Right up my alley. It's a group of overweight kids that go to essentially a fat camp, is what they call it. And they are all kind of friends and buddies, and there's that.
Well, so the camp has been under different ownership for previous years, and so they all really enjoy going there, and it's not like a punishment or like that style of a camp. But yes, like as you're saying, they come here for this year, and it's been
taken over. Mm-hmm. It's been purchased by a group of people that we don't know, but we do know who it's going to be run by, which is the Ben Stiller character, it's the proto character that he had from the Dodgeball film. I mean, if you imagine his character from Dodgeball,
sure,
it's that same character, but he's terrorizing children, which I don't know is inherently either funnier or a lot worse. And what I really like about it is when when the main character's dad comes to tell him where he's gonna go, and they're watching a video, and it looks like fun. They're having race car tracks and all kinds of fun stuff. A big blob-like thing they catapult kids into the water with.
Yes.
It looks the greatest summer camp adventure ever, and then it's revealed that it's kind of for weight loss for children. The kid gets immediately kind of smart alecky with his dad and says, "This is a fat camp," and he's like, "Well, it's not a fat camp," and he's like, "Well, you're fat, why don't you go?" And I immediately connect it with this kid and all the kids, because they were all very quick-witted. And they kind of were, in a lot of 90s movies, really Mighty Ducks and, even a little bit of like Sandlot, like these kids were very quick-witted and telling jokes and kind of able to give it as much as they could receive. And that was something that I really kind of connected with as a kid. And it was wonderful to watch.
That's interesting. So you mentioned the no parents thing. So I'm looking for the formula here, and what is missing from the formula in different movies, because I'm sure they're probably not all the same. But so you've got the camp owner, maybe nefarious. You've got camp counselors, which maybe aren't very responsible. Does it seem like there's a bit of a formula there? I mean,
yeah, I would say, I think. So you have the kids away from parents, which a lot of these movies are probably more for kids, because that's something that kids would like to see. That's just something enjoyable.
And immediately they could be vulnerable. I mean,
right.
But they're sharp, right?
And I think there's that, but I think it's kind of like with a horror film, like there's kind of a controlled danger. So like we know these kids aren't actually just out in the wilderness. They're at a camp. It's kind of a controlled environment, but they are still on their own, typically away from adults. So there's like kind of a safety, a pleasure in that in the movies where there's some danger, some peril there, but it's not so much unless it's Friday the 13th. There's not so much peril that people are in danger.
The exception that proves the rule.
Yes, yeah. And I should say for Friday the 13th, all of the stuff that happens is like a few days before the actual campers get there. So it's all the camp counselors. So there's no children in peril that I remember. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's true too, is the idea of it's this illusion of freedom that the summer camp, and so they get up to wacky and zany antics, which each movie that's on this list kind of has some form of element of some form of antics. So do you have any other movies you want to go down?
Sure, yeah. So one that I wouldn't want to finish up without mentioning is Moonrise Kingdom, which is a movie that I do think is more for adults. But
beautiful film.
Oh yeah, great film, and it really captures, to me, a lot of people, it's a Wes Anderson film. He can be kind of a divisive director. To me, it's a movie that very beautifully captures the kind of camp movie feeling. It doesn't necessarily take place all in a camp. It takes place on an island, I think somewhere up in the New England area, where there's a boy who's in some kind of scouts, and I can't remember what the scouts are, but
yeah, I don't remember the name of them.
Some kind of Boy Scouts type of thing. And he's gone to this island for his camp, and then a girl he met, I think the previous fall or something, also she lives on that island with her family, and they're in love, and they've decided they want to get together and run away from everybody. And so he escapes his camp, but then a lot of it takes place. Edward Norton is the scoutmaster, and they rally all the scouts around to go find their missing camper. Or the missing scout. And, meanwhile, the boy and the girl are off in the woods, and they're trying to escape the island so they can run off and be in love together. And it's as an adult watching it, it's really like a nostalgic kind of escape back into like young love and childhood and things. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's just like a pure pleasure of a movie. It's really, really well done. There's some good humorous moments in it. But again, it is Wes Anderson. So if he's not someone you enjoy, you're definitely not going to like this one. It's very much a Wes Anderson film.
I think so too. And that's one of my favorite things of Wes Anderson. He really does strike a chord where he can play with whimsical nature. The sets and the colors and everything is so well designed, and it can be very whimsical. And a lot of the messages he still delivers has this tinge of seriousness to it, and this is no exception. You have these kids, and they really do capture the the children actors do a phenomenal job at.
Yeah, they're incredible.
And they are pitted up against Bill Murray, and they have Edward Norton, as you said, Bruce Willis. You have these giant actors in this film. Tilda Swinton makes an appearance, and the kids hold their own throughout the whole movie, which good because it's centered on them. And you really do feel the innocence that they have and that they believe running away together is going to solve their problems because they've had it enough with the adults. The adults in their lives have kind of failed them in various ways, and they feel like striking out on their own is going to be their best bet. And it's a pretty deep concept, but it's done so whimsically. There's the scene where they go swimming, and then the girl brings along her record player, and they play their music, and they're dancing around. And if that doesn't encapsulate like this innocence of summer and, you know, this young love, and they're here, and they truly believe that they're gonna have it figured out, I don't know what else would. Because in that scene, you definitely feel like these kids, they feel like they know what's going on and how to move forward and how to be happy, and this is how you do it. And it still brings that weighted issue of the parents need to step up, or the adults in their lives need to step up, and you kind of get to see that all unfold gift wrapped it in a brilliant tapestry that Wes Anderson always does with each of his movies.
Yeah, and I'd say, to tie into another movie on the list, with Moonrise Kingdom, there's very much the theme of getting away from society. Like you're saying, the adults have kind of failed them. And even in Moonrise Kingdom, the adults kind of come to say, or kind of, you could kind of see like they can't really blame the kids for wanting to run away, like, and make their own world and all this type of thing. You know, they're on the beach shore or whatever. But a very different movie, but also a summer camp movie that's on the list was Camp Nowhere, which I actually watched for the first time recently. And that's got Christopher Lloyd as the camp counselor. But basically, it's all these kids whose parents are sending them to either like computer camp or various other camps that they really don't want to go to. They don't want to waste their summer there. So they basically con their parents into sending them to this camp, but they've created the camp. They've just hired this Christopher Lloyd guy. He's in a trailer. He's like a former drama teacher or something. So of course he has costumes to fool all their parents, and there's some good bits with that.
What year was this one made?
I think it was 94.
94. Oh,
yeah. So it was right around the time Heavyweights was coming out. It might have been just before Heavyweights, but it's really pretty good. Like, I feel like it's kind of underrated or forgotten. So they get to their camp, and it's basically just, you know, Camp Chaos or something. But there's a good story throughout it, and it develops into more than just kids being goofy, and they kind of have to, you know, they spend all of their the money their parents have given them for the summer. They spend it fairly early, so then they have to figure out how they're gonna, you know, get through the rest of the summer, and then their parents want to come visit, and so they have to figure out how they're gonna trick all their parents. But that was a good one.
Did those kids grow up to then create a college and have Lewis Black come in as that's the film Accepted with Justin Long? They didn't get accepted to various colleges, and so they create their own college and has Lewis Black come in.
That could be a loose sequel.
Yes, I'm interested now in seeing these two together and say, this has got a lot of parallels to it. These kids just grew up and decided to fake it until they made it the whole way through.
Yeah, it's very much that kind of a thing.
I'm curious, you know, you mentioned that Heavyweights was, you know, in the 90s, and this is in the 90s. So would you say that the 90s was the decade of the summer camp movies?
I think the 80s were the decade of summer camp movies with more raunchy humor for adult, like more in the vein of like Meatballs, or like kind of the sex comedies like Porky's or things like that. Which
Revenge of the Nerds.
Not a summer camp. But just that style of comedy.
Sure.
And which a lot of those, just nothing came of those movies. We don't have them in the collection, but then it's also there's not a lot you can point to.
But I see why you bring those up, because it's very much an ensemble sort of cast that, you know, a lot of different stereotypical kind of characters, but funny and sometimes some depth.
And I think that by the 90s, that evolved into basically making those style of movies, but for little kids. So obviously a lot of the raunchier stuff, although not all. If you watch like Heavyweights and Camp Nowhere, sometimes some stuff makes it in there. But so it gets toned down, but it's more for a kid audience, just because while it was fun for teenagers to watch all these kids escape in a camp, it's also very fun for kids, kind of the Nickelodeon era or of the 90s to watch all their. So it's like toned down 80s comedies, kind of. So the Heavyweights and Camp Nowhere, I'd put more in that vein of like.
And I would say even for that kind of comedy in the 90s, and maybe it's because I would imagine you and I both are the product of growing up through the 90s and being on the target audience for this stuff. But it came in droves because it wasn't just summer camp movies. You had movies like the aforementioned like Sandlot and Mighty Ducks and all these other movies that it's like these kids banding together, Little Giants. Like you have a lot of movies during that time frame of all these kids kind of banding together. One
movie, if I could add one more, I don't know how we're doing on time, that I think carries that torch through even into the 2010s was the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I think it's the second one. No, it's not Roger. It might be. It's either Roger Rules or Dog Days. And I watched.
Dog Days.
Okay, I think that's it. That there's some summer camp scenes in there, and I feel like there's just not a lot of live action kids movies anymore. It's mostly like 3D CGI animation and stuff. Right. But those Wimpy Kids movie, I haven't seen the fourth film, which is a different cast, but those first three I think kind of carry that torch through with this kind of like irreverent kid and authority kind of crashing down on type of thing. So that's one that's on the list as well. You said it was Dog Days?
Yeah, Dog Days. Okay. And some of those I feel like those J books, which would be in our system if you came and looked, some of those J books have really expanded and have influenced a lot of different movies of recent years. Yeah. And Diary of a Wimpy Kid would be one. I know that it's a little bit different, but like Wonder. So again, not summer movies, but just the perspective of like a kid and kind of following them and their stories. I am curious though, around the room, have you ever actually gone to a summer camp?
That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have, yeah. So I never went to like the idyllic camp from like the movies, but I went to a church camp for a week as a kid, and then I went to a scout camp, I think probably for a week as a kid. The scout camp was an overnight camp. The church camp was more of we would just go during the day, and then the bus would take us back. Yeah. So the closest thing to the experiences you see in these movies I had was the scout camp, and then it really was obviously nowhere near as fun as
you're telling me you never had to duct tape salami to your back to hide it into your camp like in Heavyweights?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Oh, of course, yes. You have one taped to your back now.
No, unfortunately, nobody ever took over my beloved fat camp and then popped the blob inflatable thing in the pool. I never had to do battle with that. So.
You just never really had a childhood, I guess.
No, yeah, but I was able to live it out through these movies. So
absolutely. How about yourself? Did you ever?
I'll tell you, I did go to camp, and it was Y Camp, and it was a week-long camp south of Stillwell, Kansas. Mm-hmm. Called Red Cedar Forest, and I remember being dropped off and having no idea what this was all about. And I had been dropped into, maybe it was even 2 weeks, but there were a lot of kids that were there for the entire summer. So right away, I'm totally disoriented. Yeah. They've already got their ways set up.
All the time.
Everybody can kind of relate that there's a little terror to, being young, being on your own, and finding that self-reliance and making decisions and, not trusting your decisions, all that, those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Edward?
I actually did not. Oh, I grew up in a small town.
You're no longer allowed to be on the podcast.
Oh man,
I'm sorry.
You guys exposed me.
Camp kids only.
Well, here's what I propose. I think whoever is in your friends and family network, they need to, for your next birthday, give you the summer camp experience.
I actually never did, and I think I was more along the lines of like a Sandlot summer where the parents just cut you loose and you're gone. And I lived in a small town, and even at a young age, because I had older brothers, 5, 6, we'd get on bicycles and we'd be gone all summer long. Yeah. And we would come back. My dad had a really wicked whistle, and we could be about 3 blocks away, and we would just kind of be playing, and then we would tell our friends, stop, and we would just listen for a minute. and we could hear his whistle, and we're like, we got to go home. Like, that is the time to go
I can
home.
relate to that. I mean, we would, during the summer, we would get up and we would play until our moms forced us to come in for lunch. Then we'd go out and play some more. Then we'd be, called in for dinner. Then we'd go out and we play all the night games, So during the day, it might be sports. Like, we played a lot of baseball. We played a lot of kickball and football, basketball, everything. But at night, you play games like
Flashlight tag or
capture the flag, things like that. But then your parents would force you to come in, and there was a lot of biking too, biking all over the place. But it was a different time, it was a lot of fun.
I think so too, and I think for these summer camp movies, you talked a second about living your summer camp life through these movies.
Yeah.
And that definitely was for me, like heavyweights especially.
Yeah.
And then, not that it's in our catalog that I can recall, but I know Nickelodeon had a show called Salute Your Shorts. And so there was a time period where these summer camp movies and things were a very big part of viewing for kids, and that definitely struck a chord. It was maybe because I never went to a camp, I could romanticize of like, yeah, I'm just like those guys, being these rough and tough, smart alecky kids, right. Telling everybody off and having just a blast doing it. And it's probably best that I didn't experience that, because it looks like such a wild time, but also I'm sure the ramifications, the true life ramifications of what some of these kids do is probably a little too much to be taken on.
That's true. Plus, camp really does get kind of, it's hot. It's, you're getting sunburned. There's bugs everywhere.
They don't mention there's no air conditioning.
Right. So if you can enjoy it in like an air-conditioned place with a soda and a thing of popcorn, that's way better than actually going to camp. So,
well, I wonder if, for the folks that are parents out there, if that's just, a way to connect to your kids with these movies, that maybe if your kids aren't the outdoorsy types, and a lot of kids do not have the kind of childhoods that we did, where we're out playing a lot. And so I wonder if that's just a good way to kind of connect with your kid and kind of share what your childhood was like through these camp movies. So. Absolutely.
So if you're looking to connect with your kid, or you want to relive some of the memories and relive some of the movies, I definitely want to make sure to plug Mike's list before we go, which if you go to our website, jocolibrary.org, we have the catalog search bar, and there's a drop-down menu. If you use that drop-down menu to the left and go down to user and search JCL Mike K, you'll be able to find not only the summer list, but Mike has a lot of brilliant lists that maybe we can do future podcasts on and have fun with, because he has a good collection of movies and ratings that he does. So thanks for making the list, because it's been a blast to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Could we do just a quick summary of all the movies that are on that list?
Do you want to? I don't have the whole list in front of me.
I do have a list. So I will go just straight down the list. We have Adventures of Spin and Marty, which is
that's an old Disney show.
Yeah,
from the 50s.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, the old, and I think it's the oldest. But the next one's it's the original versions of the Parent Trap. It's the Parent Trap and Parent Trap 2. It's a combo that we have. Which I didn't know there was a sequel, and if they trapped the parents the first time, I'm curious as to who they're trapping the second one.
Yeah, I think you have to assume there'll always be a sequel.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's always enough parents out there to be trapping. Then we have Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, which we mentioned, as well as Meatballs, headed by Bill Murray. We have Friday the 13th, which again, that's that horror standout that we have. On its own merits, watch it at any point in time. But for the summer, I'm sure it's a great summer camp movie as well. Troop Beverly Hills.
That was a good one.
I had not seen or heard of, and you watched it recently.
Yeah, I just watched that the other night. I hadn't seen it. I don't even know if I'd ever seen it all the way through, but it's Shelley Long.
Shelley Long. I was about to say Shelley Duvall, and that would have been so wrong.
That's a very different movie.
But, that was interesting, because that was right after her Cheers fame. Yeah. And, I'm going to go hit the big screen. And
she is great in it. I mean, I know that I think I haven't seen a lot of Cheers, but my recollection is that was it Diane?
Yeah,
was not the most liked character,
right?
But she's really got some good comedic timing. A lot of the line delivery is just very, Yeah, I don't know. I think she does a really good job with it. But it's about kind of like a Beverly Hills diva type of woman who is very materialistic and kind of detached from her family. And her daughter joins like a Girl Scouts kind of organization, and then she becomes their scout leader. And they kind of have to learn. They're in the wilderness some, but then it's also just the very like selling cookies and things. And the rest of the Girl Scouts don't like them because they're the Beverly Hills troop, so they're too fancy and all of this type of thing. So yeah, but it was good, just a good like kind of a
back
kids
to the
comedy.
formula where it's that dysfunctional camp counselor
Yeah.
or leader, and then maybe there's some growth there.
Yeah,
And the classic pitting, we're the other camp. I think almost every camp movie has that in their DNA too, or a lot
Yeah.
of them do. Charlie Brown went up against, kids that seemed like bullies, and they had like a motorboat instead of a
Right.
raft. And you do have that heavyweights. It was the MVP camp across the lake. And so that's always in there. And then kind of that same, I think it has some of the same aspects to it too, but further down on the list, you have the Addams Family values. And that kind of has the scenes where it's us versus them kind of camp mentality, that tribalism part of camp mentality. And then Camp Nowhere, which you mentioned, there's heavyweights on there. It Takes Two, which is just a mock-up of The Parent Trap, right?
basically. Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation was, but they basically remade The Parent Trap with the Olsen twins, and that was It Takes Two. And then like a couple years later, they remade The Parent Trap. They called it The Parent Trap.
Yeah.
with
which is on the list as well with Lindsay Lohan.
Yes, yeah.
I like the idea of It Takes Two is Parent Trap plus Mary-Kate and Ashley equal dollar signs.
Yeah,
That's
pretty much.
basically
And it
the
worked.
formula. And it worked.
Yeah, it was a huge hit.
And so then, as you mentioned, they have The Parent Trap on there with Lindsay Lohan. Then Wet Hot American Summer,
Yeah.
which we did not talk about so much, but I watched it for the first time after I saw your list, and it is outrageous, and it has just about tons and tons of every funny comedian you can think of, whether it's the producer or a director now or an actor, actress, or a
It's a David Wayne
writer.
movie, right?
Yes, and it has, Paul Rudd,
the
Amy
cast,
Poehler, Michael Ian Black.
Yeah, Joe Latruglio from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
It just has so many people in it, and it is outrageous. It's definitely taking Meatballs, which is already an outrageous film, and somehow parodies it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense, Oma. Like, how do you parody a comedy? I haven't seen too many of those where you take a comedy and you make a parody of that.
Yeah, it definitely works, though. I feel like it
It
just
does
kind
work.
of goes
It's a parody
extreme
of an
with all
entire
those things.
genre. Maybe all
Yeah.
the movies on the
It's
list.
definitely
Yeah.
a parody of all the movie on the list. Actually, one of my favorite scenes in Wet Hot American Summer is in a lot of films, and Meatballs had this directly. It's that other camp. That other camp comes and visit, and they're superior in some way. And in Meatballs, they had the baseball game, right? And they're sitting there, and they're just trying to win. The heavyweights, they have this relay race that they have to go do. The Race for Your Life, that's entirely centered around racing a boat. I mean, the whole point is a competition. You have Wet Hot American Summer. There's a scene where everybody's sitting around waiting to play this baseball game, and then when the superior team shows up, they all kind of look at each other and they say, "Yeah, you guys ready to do this?" And the team goes, "No, this has kind of been done before," and very much tongue in cheek, kind of saying, "We've seen this movie. We know the underdog faces the all powerful team, and we come out on top. And let's just not even do it." And I just thought it was a really funny tongue in cheek moment in that film.
Yeah.
And then
although
next,
we should maybe mention with Wet Hot American Summer, it's kind of like it's not necessarily appropriate for the whole family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's just worth mentioning in case somebody hears that and thinks it would be something fun for the kids to watch. It's more of an R-rated comedy kind of thing.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
And subsequent sequels, 10 years, 15 years later now on they're still doing kind of that raunchy comedy. That's definitely, they're all adults, but they're supposed to be playing either the college age. You have Paul Rudd coming back.
The Netflix series?
Yes, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's definitely, this list has a great range of
A little something for everybody.
a little something for everybody.
Interesting.
And then next on the list is Holes, which is
it's a great movie.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. It totally fits, but it seems like this is like a required summer camp movie. Not as in it's required to be on the list, but rather the kids' summer quote unquote camp is required by some kind of law enforcement.
Yeah.
It is a prison thing, right? Like there's something or juvenile detention.
Yeah, they have been
I haven't seen that one since
to
it
a
was in
summer
theaters.
camp experience of sorts.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember enjoying it, but it's been a long time.
Well, it does have that same feeling of like kids banding together. You've got the hot heat of the summer, a little too hot.
Dysfunctional leader.
Dysfunctional. So, I mean, it really does, funny enough, it does check a lot of those boxes. And then we have Moonrise Kingdom, which you mentioned, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Dog Days. And then the final one is called Standing Up, which is completely off my radar. I have not seen anything
That
about
was
this.
one that I found on some other lists when I was looking for lists of summer camp movies, or I might have found it through the tags. I haven't seen it, but it sounded like it might be kind of interesting. It was a boy and a girl. I don't know if they're from two different camps or if they're the same camp, but they don't feel like they fit into their respective camps, and then they run off together. So it might be kind of like Moonrise Kingdom, or I have no idea. It seemed like it was fairly well reviewed, but I haven't checked that one out yet. So.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you have your own list we have to investigate.
Yeah.
I think I have an addition to your list.
Oh, yeah?
Yes,
We
that's
may not
awesome.
have it here in our collection, but we do have interlibrary loans, so you could always get it
Absolutely.
that way. But since our summer reading theme is a universe of stories, what about Space Camp?
Space Camp,
I've
yeah.
never seen it, actually. It might be a horrible film.
I've never seen that one either. That I don't think we do have it in the collection.
Yeah.
But I know that one of our Lenexa librarians, Donna, is a big fan of Space Camp,
Oh, yeah.
and she talked to me about it back in the day. So,
Okay.
But so it at least comes with that recommendation.
Can be interlibrary loaned.
Yes. Yeah,
you can talk to your
absolutely.
librarian and they can work that out with you.
And, there's a really good interlibrary loan podcast episode. If you've ever been curious about how that all works and how to do it, go give that a listen. So I want to make sure that we say one more time how to get to this list.
Yeah.
A quick reminder, you go to jocolibrary.org.
Yes, go to jocolibrary.org. In our catalog search box, there's a drop-down menu next to there. If you go to that drop-down menu and click User, you can then search for JCL Mike K, and that way you can go to essentially Mike's page where he's got a lot of his rated movies, comments, and his lists.
Can you search for lists?
You can search
Yeah.
for lists if you want to go straight to summer camp movies. If you search list in that drop-down menu, I'm funneling you to Mike's page because I feel
Sure.
like he's got a lot of good stuff there.
Well, that is great. So if you enjoyed this discussion today about the genre of summer camp movies, and you think that you have a really great idea for another genre, whether it be books, music, or movies, please hit us up on Facebook. Just go to the Messenger and tell us what genre you think that we should talk about next.
Sure.
Yeah,
Recommendation.
absolutely. I think we would be very interested.
We would like recommendations as well. So
Oh, yes. If you have a summer camp movie, go ahead and reach
Yeah.
out on Facebook or through calls. Go talk to your local librarian. Do whatever you need to get us that recommendation. We'd love to add it to the list.
carrier pigeon, whatever it takes.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we miss a question you wish we would have asked? Do you have thoughts or stories about today's topic? Share them with us on Facebook. Facebook.com/JocoLibrary.
And now, our writer's quote of the day.
Hi, this is Tiffany Rinnne, and I'm a youth information specialist at Corinth Branch. And my quote is from I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. And it is, people die, I think, but your relationship with them doesn't. It continues and is ever changing.
We leave you with sounds from one of our locations. It's your audio minute we call Library Zen.
For more episodes of Did You Hear, go to the Johnson County Library website, jocolibrary.org/didyouhear.